The betrayal cut deeper than I ever imagined possible. It wasn't just that my father left us for Lara, his coworker, or that he divorced my mom after years of lies and deceit. No, it was worse, so much worse. As the pieces of his betrayal unraveled over time, I discovered something that shattered what little trust one had left in him. Long before the divorce was finalized, he had secretly funneled large sums of money into an account solely for Lara's benefit. My mother, once financially secure thanks to their shared income, was suddenly drowning in debt after the split. She worked tirelessly to make ends meet while Dad lavished gifts on Lara and her son, Aaron. The man who promised to protect me from all harm, the same man who built me treehouses and chased away monsters under my bed, had abandoned not only my mother but also me, his own flesh and blood. And why? For a woman who manipulated him into prioritizing her child over his own daughter. Every promise he made, every memory we shared, felt like a cruel joke now. He didn't just leave, he erased me bit by bit, replacing me with Aaron as if I never mattered at all. When I was 22, life dealt me a blow so devastating that it left scars deeper than any physical wound. On a rainy night, while driving home from work, another car ran a red light and slammed into mine. The impact sent my vehicle spinning across the intersection, leaving me unconscious and bleeding internally. By some miracle, I survived, but the aftermath of that accident revealed truths about my family dynamics far more painful than my injuries. My mother and stepfather David flew in immediately, their faces etched with worry as they rushed to my hospital bedside. But my father? He never showed up, not even once during the 3 agonizing days I spent recovering in the ICU. Instead, mere hours after the crash, he called me, not to check if I was alive or offer comfort, but to tell me Aaron was having a breakdown because his girlfriend had ended their relationship. His voice was cold, detached, almost mechanical, as though my near-death experience paled in comparison to Aaron's trivial heartbreak. The doctors diagnosed me with severe internal bleeding, requiring emergency surgery that left me weak and vulnerable. As I lay there, tubes snaking out of my body, I couldn't stop thinking about how much I needed my father, how much I'd always needed him. But instead of being by my side, he chose to prioritize someone else's pain over mine. It wasn't just neglect, it felt like betrayal. Each beep of the heart monitor echoed the emptiness growing inside me, reminding me that the man who once built treehouses for me and promised to protect me no longer existed. Or perhaps he never truly did. While Mom and David stayed by my side day and night, holding my hand through every moment of fear and uncertainty, Dad's absence loomed larger than ever. For 3 days, I clung to life without him, realizing that I had already lost my father long before this accident. And when I finally returned home, battered but alive, I knew one thing for certain: whatever bond we once shared was gone forever. The days leading up to my wedding were supposed to be filled with joy and anticipation, but instead, they became a nightmare fueled by betrayal and manipulation. My father didn't just refuse to walk me down the aisle, he launched a smear campaign against me, painting me as a selfish opportunist who had sold her loyalty for a house. He told anyone who would listen that I chose Mike not out of love, but because of the material value of Grandpa's lake house, a lie so absurd it made my stomach churn. It wasn't enough for him to abandon me emotionally over the years, now, he wanted to tarnish my reputation in front of our entire family and community. Then came the rehearsal dinner, a scene straight out of a horror movie. As we practiced walking down the aisle, everything seemed fine until an unexpected figure stumbled into the venue, my father. His disheveled appearance and slurred speech immediately revealed his drunken state. At first, he lurked at the back, watching silently, but within minutes, chaos erupted. He began shouting at the top of his lungs, accusing my grandfather of trying to buy his way into being my father. His voice boomed through the hall, startling everyone. "I'm her real father," he screamed, storming toward the altar. The worst moment came when he physically shoved past my bridesmaids, knocking one of them aside, and lunged toward my grandfather, attempting to push him away from his position beside me. Pandemonium ensued. My flower girls burst into tears, their tiny faces contorted with fear. Even the ring bearer froze mid-step, clutching the pillow like it was his only lifeline. My mother frantically recorded the scene on her phone, knowing we might need evidence later. Meanwhile, Mike's brother stepped in heroically, restraining my father before things escalated further. Security arrived shortly after, escorting my father out while he continued yelling insults about how I was dead to him and had chosen money over blood. His words stung, but deep down, I knew this wasn't about love or family, it was about control. For years, he'd prioritized Aaron over me, and now, in his twisted mind, rejecting him meant I was rejecting my own flesh and blood. But the truth was clear: I had already lost my father long ago. The truth about Aaron's wedding date wasn't just a coincidence, it was a calculated move, meticulously planned to humiliate me and assert his dominance in our father's eyes. What I discovered later sent chills down my spine, Aaron had been texting his fiancée for months, boasting that choosing October 15th, the exact day of my wedding, wasn't an accident but a deliberate act of sabotage. His goal? To prove to our father that he loved him more than I ever could. And the worst part? My father knew all along. Instead of stopping this cruel scheme, he not only condoned it but actively participated by helping Aaron secure the venue, a decision that felt like a dagger to my heart. When Aaron ultimately decided to ask his biological father to be his best man instead of Dad, things took an even darker turn. Rather than owning up to his exclusion, Dad spun a web of lies, claiming Aaron hadn't invited him at all. He played the victim, sobbing on the phone as if he were the one betrayed, hoping I'd feel sorry enough to let him walk me down the aisle after all. It was nauseating how manipulative they both were, working together to paint me as selfish while elevating Aaron as the better child. The texts Lara showed me revealed their twisted game plan. They wanted to make sure everyone saw Aaron as the golden son who deserved more attention, love, and validation. Even worse, Dad encouraged Aaron to flaunt his biological father's financial support, knowing full well it would overshadow anything I achieved. When Aaron's father offered to cover half the wedding costs, a staggering $40,000, Dad seethed with jealousy, unable to compete with such generosity. Yet, instead of stepping aside gracefully, he tried to guilt-trip Aaron into rejecting the offer, insisting that loyalty should outweigh money. This toxic dynamic made me realize something horrifying. My father didn't see me as his daughter anymore, he viewed me as competition. The legal battle over the lake house became the final chapter in a saga of betrayal and greed that had been brewing for years. After my grandfather officially transferred the property to me and Mike, my father unleashed his fury in ways I never imagined possible. He didn't just threaten litigation, he filed a lawsuit claiming he deserved partial control of the lake house because, as he put it, I am still your father. His argument was absurd. He accused me of manipulating my elderly grandfather into giving up his most cherished asset. According to him, I had preyed on Grandpa's frailty, convincing him to hand over the deed out of pity or confusion. The audacity of his claims left me speechless. How could the man who abandoned me now claim ownership of something so deeply tied to my happiness? But what happened next turned the tables completely. During the investigation, my grandfather's attorney uncovered shocking evidence hidden within decades of financial records. It revealed that my father had secretly maintained a separate account, money ostensibly set aside for both Aaron and me, but which he had systematically drained to fund Aaron's life. Every major expense, from tuition fees to Aaron's first car, came directly from this fund. Even worse, nearly $40,000 earmarked for Aaron's lavish wedding was traced back to this account. When confronted about it during Lara's divorce proceedings, my father coldly justified his actions by saying, "Your mom and grandfather can take care of you. You don't need this money." This revelation shattered any lingering illusions I had about fairness or love in our family dynamic. My father wasn't just neglectful, he was calculating, ensuring that every resource flowed toward Aaron while leaving me to fend for myself. The courtroom drama reached its peak when my grandfather presented irrefutable proof of his mental clarity and intent to gift the house. With no case left to argue, my father lost the lawsuit. But his response? Pure venom. He stormed into my workplace, screaming accusations that I had stolen his retirement dream, implying that he and Aaron had planned to use the lake house as their personal fishing retreat. Security footage captured his meltdown, sealing yet another piece of evidence against him. Aaron's downfall was as swift as it was devastating, a cruel twist of fate that mirrored the manipulative dynamics he had helped perpetuate. After his lavish $80,000 wedding at an exclusive vineyard, fully funded by his biological father, it seemed like Aaron had finally secured the validation and attention he craved. But what followed was a chilling abandonment. Within weeks, his father stopped answering calls, ignored texts, and ultimately cut off all contact, leaving Aaron reeling in despair. The man who had suddenly reappeared to make amends vanished just as quickly, leaving behind a void filled with unanswered questions and shattered illusions. For Aaron, this betrayal must have felt like déjà vu, a second rejection from the same man who walked out on him as a child. Desperation soon consumed him, manifesting in toxic rants across social media. He began posting cryptic messages accusing me of destroying his family, claiming I had orchestrated everything, stealing the lake house, turning Lara against our father, and ruining their lives. His posts grew increasingly unhinged, laced with venomous accusations about how I was a fake family member and a gold digger. One particularly scathing post read, "Some people trade blood for bricks. Hope your new house keeps you warm when you're alone." It was laughable, considering he had done nothing but exploit others' generosity while contributing nothing meaningful himself. But beneath the vitriol lay a deeper truth. Aaron's bitterness stemmed not only from his father's abandonment but also from the realization that his entire life had been built on borrowed foundations. Every achievement, every privilege, from his education to his car to his extravagant wedding, had been paid for by someone else, usually my father or grandfather. Now, stripped of those safety nets, Aaron was forced to confront the harsh reality of his own inadequacies. His public meltdowns became a spectacle, drawing mockery from strangers online while alienating even his closest friends. Watching his unraveling felt surreal. The brother who once prided himself on being the favorite son was now reduced to a desperate figure clinging to fragments of a crumbling facade. After losing the lawsuit over the lake house, my father's descent into madness became impossible to ignore. His obsession with the property, and his inability to control me, unleashed a level of rage I hadn't thought possible. One morning, as I sat in my office preparing for an important meeting, security called me urgently. My father had stormed into the building, shouting accusations that I had stolen his retirement dream. He ranted about how the lake house was rightfully his and how I had manipulated Grandpa into giving it to me. The scene quickly escalated. He refused to leave, even after being asked multiple times by security. Coworkers peeked out of their offices, horrified, as my once respected father hurled insults at anyone who dared approach him. It took 3 security guards and eventually the police to remove him from the premises. That day marked a turning point. My employer issued a formal ban preventing him from entering the building again. The fallout didn't stop there. Word spread among our extended family, further isolating him. Friends who once admired him began distancing themselves, unable to reconcile the man they knew with the manipulative figure he'd become. Even Laura, Aaron's mother, cut ties completely after realizing the extent of his deceit. As weeks turned into months, his life unraveled before my eyes. Once surrounded by people who adored him, he now found himself utterly alone, a victim of his own relentless need to dominate and deceive. When I decided to sever all contact permanently, it wasn't out of anger but clarity. This wasn't the man who taught me to ride a bike or built me treehouses. That man was gone, replaced by someone consumed by bitterness and greed. In the aftermath of chaos and betrayal, I found solace in the life I had chosen for myself, a life far removed from the toxicity that once defined my existence. Mike, my husband, became not just a partner but a sanctuary from the storms of my past. Together, we transformed the lake house into more than just a home. It became a symbol of rebirth, a place where every creaking floorboard whispered stories of healing rather than heartbreak. My grandfather, now living with us part-time, spent countless hours teaching Mike how to fish off the dock, a ritual that filled me with both joy and nostalgia. Their bond grew stronger each day, filling the void left by years of neglect and manipulation at the hands of my father. The holidays brought clarity. For our first Christmas in the lake house, only those who truly mattered were invited: Mom, David, Grandpa, and a handful of close friends who had stood by me through everything. As we sat around the fireplace, laughter echoing through the cozy living room, I realized something profound. Cutting ties with my father wasn't losing family, it was reclaiming myself. The weight of his lies, Aaron's jealousy, and Lara's eventual departure no longer haunted me. Instead, they served as reminders of what I had escaped, a life suffocated by control and deceit. Every sunrise over the lake felt like a new beginning. When doubts crept in, I reminded myself of the spreadsheets, the calculated betrayals, and the years he chose Aaron over me. That man was gone long before I walked away. What remained was peace, a hard-earned freedom I would never take for granted again.